Good morning. This is going to be a series where we're going to look at a video called Apostle Paul, Tovia Singer, and Hebrew Roots. This is from the channel Biblical Roots of Christianity. And Mr. Solberg, a very nice gentleman, very coherent person. So I'm not going to be attacking him in any personal way, but I don't. I want to show you his tactical argument about something, and we're going to use this as a launching point to a series of videos, which I will entitle How to Defeat Strategies Used Against Jesus-Centric Anti-Paulinism. Let me repeat that. How to Defeat Strategies Used Against Jesus-Centric Anti-Paulinism. So if you're trying to pull people away from Paul, to bring them back towards Jesus, that's what we're going to teach you. What are the strategies to defeat their arguments? And so you have to know what their arguments are. Part one will be countering scare tactics, and you'll see why as we look at this video from Mr. Solberg. Okay, so in Mr. Solberg's video entitled Apostle Paul, Tovia Singer, and Hebrew Roots, which he released just yesterday, September 20, 2022, and he has a lot of videos, so he's been very successful. He has over 3,000 subscribers, so he's a significant influencer. And inside of this video, part one was not very significant to me, and then he gets into the meat of the issues in part two in a heading called Paul Contradicts Jesus, and now he's going to attempt to debunk the issue. And I'm going to literally, we're not even going to get past his opening remark because of the way he handled it, and it's the number one tactic against anti-Paulinism from the Jesus-centric perspective. And so we need to address this elephant in the room, this common tactic. Okay, so we're going to go to the point of 6 minutes, 9 seconds of the video, and we're going to play approximately 12 seconds in a section that's called Paul Contradicts Jesus, and we won't get past the first sentence.
The second claim you might hear from anti-Christian rabbis, and even some on the more extreme end of Torahism, is that the teachings of Paul contradict the teachings of Jesus.
All right, so either if you are a person who is anti-Paul or you are interested in, is it a legitimate point of view, what's just happened? He's using scare tactics. He's saying, he's now pushing this issue into, you know, if you've heard anti-Christian rabbis or even the more extreme end of Torahism, you're going to hear people claiming Paul contradicts Jesus. So this view, therefore, that Paul contradicts Jesus isn't a just simple question of comparing what Paul says versus what Jesus says. You're already being told that you are basically in bed. If you believe that Paul contradicts Jesus, just believes it, you're in bed with anti-Christians and the extreme end of Torahism. And what this generally can be described as a scare tactics. So scare tactics are basically if it's an illegitimate point of view. In other words, the legitimate way of handling this is say, does Paul contradict Jesus? And then just look at the passages. That it should be just an objective test with no emotions, no scare tactics necessary. It's a clear question, yes or no. So a scare tactic means you don't really have a legitimate argument, but you are going to use the strategy of fear to influence the public's reaction. So I'll give you, this is from a website on rhetorical devices, and it's a very common one. It's used to use fear to influence the public reaction, coercing a favorable response by preying upon the audience's fears. But the only reason it's a tactic is because it's not true. And why do I say that? Because when things are really dangerous, they really are truly dangerous. And you can say, you know, this building is on fire. Yes, the person is trying to scare you, but if the building's actually on fire, you need to run out of the building. So scare tactic is just a way to describe a misleading or false tactic when you do not have an advantage and you are trying to get an advantage or win an argument. So I want to show you how this has been used in my own personal life, and because I've had this experience. Okay, so on the next slide, I'm going to be playing an audio of a phone call I had with my mother in 2005. I had just written the book, Jesus Words Only, and it was a lot different than my current view, but I didn't even know about the sign of the Son of Man thing. Can you believe that? I think I didn't know, right. But I just knew Revelation 2 and a few other things, and that Paul taught against the law, and I understood the principle of apostasy. So he was not someone to to read except for edification, but he wasn't an inspired person. He's a false prophet. That's basically it. So anyway, I get a phone call from my mother, and now what's happened is my brother is using scare tactics on my mother. And even though I had talked to my brother for a long period of time about it beforehand, he got embarrassed. Someone at church asked him about it, and now he's upset and he's calling my mother. And listen to what she's reading me his email. And he has basically only told her that he's upset. He's not communicated anything with me. And just listen to what's happening and how my mother reacts and how I countered the argument that my brother was making, even though it was thrown at me while I'm driving home.
No, you didn't, honey, but that's not what he answered. He didn't copy you.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I just think I understand his intent, but to say Paul is a false prophet has a catastrophic potential. He's basically saying that the Bible as is essentially a conspiracy book giving those against the Bible fuel to attack Christianity. We have enough people trying to deny the relevance of the Bible, the existence of God, the life and resurrection of Jesus Christ himself, and my brother is a willing, albeit an unwitting co-conspirator.
Okay. So I guess if I criticize anything in Christianity, I'm a conspirator with Islam. I mean, that's nonsense.
Oh, wait a minute, there's more.
Okay.
Its very nature is quite damaging the concept of Christianity. Doug wanted to make a point, but in his attempt at that, it could easily be perceived as debunking the cornerstone of Christian teachings via the Bible. Doug was probably writing this on one level and would be blindsided by theoretically stating that the Bible is in large part an invalid writing. Paul is the dominant writer of the New Testament, and therefore the perception would be is that the New Testament would be inadequate and inaccurate, particularly in the New Testament. That would be the sum of the parts. Remember, perception is reality.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, but I'm at a limit.
So as you know, Jesus said your enemies will be from your own household, and but that's long been forgotten and forgiven, so that's not the issue here. But you can see the tactic of attack on you who are maybe young and not experienced in being assaulted verbally and spiritually and emotionally, will not be prepared unless you see these experiences will happen to you and you can recover. And you're going to see how I recovered in this phone call with my mother. And so there's more to it with your parents. I mean, they're going to, you reap what you sow. So if you sow love, you get love back. Anyway, so we will now go to the next clip. There's more clips to this.
And it will take the position that Paul is not an inspired writer. That's all my book is about. He's not inspired. He's edifying, meaning you can read him for edification, but he was not added to the New Testament scriptures because he was a prophet. He was just like any other writer who's considered worthy of respect, but the problem is that people forgot that was the original intent, and then they make his words, like Glenn said, the dominant writer of the New Testament. People make Paul more important than Jesus' words, and then Jesus gets shuffled in the background.
Okay, so this is going to be the last of the clips of this phone call, and I want you to see from this part of it is the advantage the anti-Paul movement has that's Jesus-centric is that we are the ones who are in favor of Christ, and the Pauline movement is against Christ. So the very fact that there's a contradiction, if provable, proves that the wrong view is to take the view of Paul, because by definition, if he contradicts Christ, he by definition is anti-Christ, right? He's against the words of Christ. So as long as you can prove the contradictions, you can never lose. And unfortunately, in the case of the situation with my brother, he was actually doing something contrary to Christ, when he went behind my back to my mother. As you should all know what passage that is from the Word of God and Word of Jesus. Okay, so let's listen to the next clip.
But he isn't communicating with me, and I don't know why he's communicating with you, why he's trying to agitate you.
Why do you think he communicates? Because he can.
I don't know. Maybe because he is afraid to talk to me, I guess. But I would encourage him to say, hey, look, the Bible says if you have something against your brother, you have to go tell them yourself. You can't tell other people that was Jesus. See, I want to tell you something. That's why I emphasize Jesus all the time. If you listen to Jesus, he tells you you're not to go to talk to anyone else but the person you have a problem with. So, by going to you, he's not following Jesus' command. So I would just say, that's very interesting, Glenn. It may be true, but why don't you contact your brother?
So I hope you can see that the argument was lost by my brother because he was doing something that was actually contrary to the messages of Christ. So he's calling my mother, claiming I'm undermining Christ when he is disobeying Christ. And so that was just, the irony was just too strong. And that's how you'll win this argument. One way or the other, every time an anti-Paulinist is against you, they're always trying to say, hey, like Richard Jordan, what did he say? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, these are not the messages that we should be following, okay? So he's got his foot in a pit. You've got Bleecker. He says the only apostle we follow is Paul. I mean, it's all over the place. They are easy targets but they'll claim they'll try to lump you in with anti-Christians and so on and try to make you sound like you're an extremist when you're just trying to bring things back to a normal position of being in favor of Christ and his words matter. Okay, so I hope this is a message on don't be afraid of scare tactics. Basically, counter them with the truth and counter them with the truth of Christ, and defeat the messages of Paul by showing his contradictions of Christ, or the person attacking you is not following the commandments of Christ. And ironically, most of the time the person listening to you also knows the commandments of Christ, and so they'll laugh like my mom did. Okay, God bless. Hope this helped you. Ciao, bye.